Hello, and welcome to our Bernie Samuel V. Champion High School political debate. Our representatives will introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Bodo Ramelow. I'm the Minister President of Thuringia, which is the home of the first Die Linke-led coalition state government, and I'm going to be representing Die Linke Party today.
Hello, I'm Christian Linder, leader of the FDP party in Germany.
Hello, I'm Alice Weidel, representative for the AfD, and migrants have to go.
Hello, I'm Ursula von der Leyen. I represent the CDU as Minister of Defense.
Hello, my name is Annalena Baerbock, and I represent the Grünen.
Hello, I am Katarina Barley, and I will be representing the SPD.
Okay. These past few years have been troubling in that we face adversity within the recent influx of refugees coming from troubled nations. It is our priority as German citizens to consider our citizens first. However, it must be a reminder to the German population that in order to collectively benefit society, we must take in refugees based on our economy to participate in the collective effort for the intake of refugees throughout the European Union. The migration policy that the CDU has provided to provide for the refugees has been successful in that we have saved over 1 million lives of foreign children, mothers, and fathers by providing an escape from their troubled nations. As Prime Minister stated this year, immigration is to not be limited to a degree that does not exceed social acceptance, and also that safeguards for long-term integration capabilities of this country. Therefore, as citizens of this great nation, we must consider that a rejection of the humanitarian stance we could have led to even worse consequences. We are a nation that openly shows our willingness to help people in need. As a CDU Minister of Defense, I have proposed, along with Angela Merkel, that we promote a 9-point plan where we can both still intake refugees in need of asylum without having to cap the numbers of refugees.
Germany desperately needs to limit migration. We need to remove asylum for German refugees. According to the Germany's basic law, Article 16, it states, persons persecuted on political grounds shall have the right of asylum. This constitution was adopted in 1949. That clause is addressing those returning against the dictatorship. We do not believe that the laws put in place in 1940 should apply to refugees fleeing conflict in the Middle East and Africa. The many fathers and rather few mothers of our Constitution were thinking about a very small group of people in the context of who should bear the responsibility of the atrocities of the Second World War and post-war Germany. This right to asylum, therefore, should not carry the same weight for today's refugees. Islam does not belong in Germany, and in order to protect our country from these refugees, we need to have more checks at external EU borders, agreements with neighboring Austria, and finally, bordering security systems to curb the influx of refugees.
Well, I'm glad to see the formation of plans and strategies beyond that of those put in place by Angela Merkel. The policies are quite lackadaisical. A centrist policy, I believe, is necessary, though, and I've already seen the beginning of divisions within our political institutions so far. As I mentioned earlier, we need to meet compromise through a centrist policy, something that would allow the transportation of small numbers of refugees into the country while also limiting them. It's necessary, though, as it is our duty as a developed nation to protect those in danger within what is described in our Constitution as those escaping political persecution, not those escaping war or famine in their countries.
1940s, may that remind you.
The key to this is integration, and the answer to that lies in what we hold close in our culture, and that is the German language. We go about this through our amazing education system. If we educate all of these immigrants and teach them everything they need to know, then they will be perfect to go into the job market, which they will be excelling in with the help of our amazing German education system and the use of the German language.
Agreed. And in addition to that, Die Linke supports unconditional right to stay for all refugees, along with proper accommodation, social protection, and equal rights. But in order to make sure that Germany is a shining example of acceptance and integration, first, we need to cooperate with our European allies to reach an EU-wide solution. We need to dismantle the Frontex and Eurosur information and security framework that's being used to inhumanely turn away refugees from EU borders. In addition, we need to ban the EU arms exports that are fueling conflicts in the Middle East in the first place. The EU is the leading exporter of arms worldwide after the US, and, of course, every weapon finds a war. In order to accomplish this, we need to democratize the EU. Die Linke has proposed that all changes to EU treaty should henceforth be decided by EU-wide popular referendums.
My opponents have clearly not done their research, nor have they touched upon the fact that refugees are very expensive to Germany. Proponents of the burden camp studies cite that they warn that nearly 2/3 of Syrians cannot read or write fluently and have trouble with basic math. A survey conducted among Syrians in this Turkish refugee camp draws similar conclusions, finding that 80% of Syrians bring less than a high school education. And here my opponents are trying to find a solution by just providing education to them, as it is something that doesn't cost anything. But education is pricey, and it should go to those who deserve it. Additionally, they bring on average lower levels of education as well. And not only that, but refugees cost a lot of money to our German economy. The annual cost of refugees range from 25 million to 65 million a year. And that is a burden difficult to debate away, even if the economy is doing well.
Of course, Die Linke supports a new progressive tax plan, including increased taxes on capital gains and corporations, as well as a one-time millionaire levy on anyone in the European Union that owns more than €1 million of wealth, of course. And we also are making it a priority to crack down on tax evasion that is gutting Germany and the EU's income.
Now, targeting corporations is very bad. It's going to be these large multinational corporations that will hire out the inexperienced workers for lower minimum wage jobs, and its integration should not be a matter of education, but one of economics. What job will hire out who, and what work will they have to support and bring in an income? That way they're not so reliant on the country.
But in order to get a job, they have to speak and write fluently in German. Are you proposing they go in there knowing a different language and trying to get a job? Or are you proposing that we all learn the Syrian language?
It's an interesting point. However, it would rely the literacy of the German language. However, there are many other languages and lingua francas that could be used, perhaps English or Spanish, as many multinational corporations have their roots all over the planet.
As if Syrian refugees have the time to take a basic level high school Spanish class. On to my next point. We need to be focusing more on Germany, and we should not be taking any more refugees. In fact, we need to be rejecting them from our borders. We need to be focusing moreover, on the problems that we have in Germany, such as the diminishing purchasing power. Life is getting more expensive in Germany, whether we like it or not, but the wages are failing to just barely keep up. This is particularly annoying for many Germans, considering the fact that government fees, fines, and taxes seem to have increased independently to the rate of inflation. In many cases, they were raised in order to avoid or reduce government debt, and the German taxpayers cannot avoid them. How do we expect these refugees to pay these taxes if ourselves, German citizens, cannot pay them? Additionally, there is a remaining social divide between East and West Germany that has only gotten worse as a result of the migrants. It has been over 25 years since the reunification, yet a social divide still remains between East and West Germany in the form of lower wages and lower employment levels. We are now focusing less on the East Germans and more on the socially disadvantaged migrants. We are focusing more on outsiders than we are the own German people.
As the only former socialist party that was rooted in East Germany, we can tell you that Die Linke is not in favor of cutting off migration. After all, incorporating the West and the East factions of the German nation is one goal, but cutting off migrants from receiving any benefits is completely another one.
How can you say this knowing that the migrant danger is more profound and significant in East Germany? Are you stating that you want to put your people in danger?
Die Linke has become one of the foremost parties in East Germany over the past few years, and I would like to point to my recent election as the minister-president of Thuringia as one of the symptoms of this increased wave of our support in East Germany. Now, I get what you're trying to say. I do not want to endanger, of course, any of my fellow East Germans, but that being said, I know that among them we have a lot higher support than you may have accounted for, and that all of them are going to side with us on this and say that we need to bring in the refugees.
The dangers of immigrants are a concern. That's why I believe we need to band together and adopt some of the policies introduced earlier in the debate regarding border security.
And Germany will not function effectively in the long run if it denies these large quantities of the population any opportunities for full participation. Instead of excluding people solely on the fact that their roots lie elsewhere, we believe that the integration is a key factor of participation and social justice. And with that, refugees should have the choice of being able to acquire a German citizenship more quickly and easily, The Grünen strive for a genuine equality of opportunity so that all immigrant workers should be given the opportunity to simply and effortlessly extend their stay and or make it permanent. With the Asylum Seekers Benefit Act in place, asylum seekers and anyone who has been granted temporary suspension of deportation are suffering severe discrimination. They are being excluded from accessing social assistance and allowance of seeking employment. We feel that in order to lighten the situation, the Asylum Seekers Benefit Act should be repealed. In another instance of said discrimination, many refugees subdue themselves to great risk by making the journey over to Europe by sea. Most either do not survive the journey or are sent back to other unsafe, undeveloped third world countries. It has gone far enough to say that this practice violates a number of human rights upheld by the EU. But the northern EU countries should not be the only ones strong enough to help out in this time of dire need. Germany must set a good example so that in return, the southern European member states will learn to accept the shared responsibility to provide this equality for everyone.
In agreement with the Green Party in opposition to the AfD, the best way to face this long-term process of the influx of refugee will be to allow them to integrate into our society if they pass security tests and are willing to adapt to a German society through the adaptation of one of the important languages. However, we are undergoing a national effort to return those who have been rejected, as Merkel had stressed earlier on this year, and it is undisputed that we are working at this moment with great vigor to deport those who have committed crimes and pose security threats to our nation.
Do you know the economic cost that brings to our country?
I do, and I am fully aware. However, Germany's economic stances are full enough supported by the EU and by other countries, and that we are all intaking refugees together. And this is not a one-country debate. This is not a one-country position. This is simply a collective effort of all of the European Union to promote this. And because we are German citizens that have been working to provide asylum for every eligible refugee, we firmly stand clear that as far as any upper limit is concerned, our position is clear. We will not accept it. Therefore, the way we will deal with refugees that have been refused asylum is by sending them back to their countries of origin if deemed safe by determining organizations, or we will deport them under a cause of crime.
Having such a staunch belief and not moving at all is detrimental to the German society. We need to find some sort of, as I mentioned earlier, centrist policy that meets everyone in the middle, that brings satisfaction to all the parties, otherwise there will be continued social disorder and unhappiness within our political institution.
But is it even our responsibility to take care of these refugees since they are not from our own country? And as I mentioned before, because of the fact that we have our own problems that we should be facing?
It is. It's a matter of what is right, what is the humane thing to do. We have the resources to take in small quantities, but a permanent stay, as you mentioned earlier, is not something that should be done. It would harm our economy. We need to, when the Syrian war and other countries subside in their conflicts, we need to allow them a way home as their home countries will build up and reestablish themselves at one point in time.
However, another thing to consider is there would be border crisis, and we would potentially have to close our borders if we didn't accept refugees.
Isn't there already border
problems.
crisis?
There is not a border crisis because we are recently taking in refugees and adapting them into our German society through the moral codes of the European Union.
Do you know the state of the refugee camps that we have now? How desolate they are, how dirty, how cramped?
They are better than they would be off in their Syrian countries or their other countries, possibly dying from starvation.
Agreed.
And thank you.
In conclusion to Die Linke's standpoint on this debate, I'd like to just wrap everything up by saying that a centrist policy is not going to do when it comes to refugees. It sounds good to compromise, it sounds good to bring all of the parties together, but when human lives are at stake, it simply is not going to do. That's why Die Linke supports unconditional right to stay, proper accommodation, and equal rights for all refugees. And of course, we want to dismantle the Frontex and Eurosur programs, like I said, that are being used at our borders to turn away refugees heartlessly. Furthermore, we want to ensure that the causes of conflict that started the whole ordeal in the Middle East are cut off to ensure that no future crises like this are formed afterwards. That's why we want to ensure that climate change is limited with our progressive energy policy to completely remake the German economy fuel efficiently and in a green manner. In addition to that, we want to have a progressive tax plan. Now, I can't stress this enough. We need to make sure that these policies are not going to make the average German suffer or the average European suffer. That's why we need to fund all of these new proposals with taxes on capital gains, taxes on corporations, and taxes on the wealthy, including Die Linke's proposed millionaire levy. These are going to be great ways to fund all of our future programs and great ways to ensure that our humanitarian cause is advanced without making our own citizens suffer. Now, in addition to that, I'd like to just conclude with saying that we pursue a pacifist policy in all senses of the word. We are against any and all foreign deployments of the Bundeswehr, that is the German National Army, and in addition, we want to cut off all of the EU's arms exports, which are leading to this conflict in the first place. And that's why you should vote Die Linke.
Along with this, earlier, the AfD spoke about how internal affairs within Germany have been getting worse and worse. When it comes to this, I believe that adding new refugees to our system would not only create a new beginning, but allow us to rethink some of the ideas that we would not only create a new beginning, but allow us to make a new Germany. This is time when we can reconfigure our conception of men's and women's roles, including within the family, to make the workplace more compatible with family and personal life, and to better take advantages of the many opportunities digitization offers us, especially when it comes to the new system of asylum.
Although this issue is exists on a uniquely European level, Germany, being the wealthiest and most powerful nation in the EU, which is going to be the most prime target for the influx of refugees going in. It has the best established welfare systems and government systems around. We need to focus our solidarity on solving immigration within Germany before we expand into the European Union.
So in addition to that, I addressed how a centrist policy will not work for solving the migration crisis, not when human lives are at stake. But what's even more important is that we do not pursue a harsh anti-immigration policy. Now, earlier the AfD spoke about how the policies that we currently are still using were created in the 1940s and how they do not believe that we should still use those for modern-day immigration purposes. But what I want to say is that how can you possibly separate yourselves from the 1940s when you are the ones who are consistently speaking out against refugees and consistently trying to divide us? How far back in history are we willing to go? Are we going to go back to the Crusades? Are we going to go back to when Protestant and Catholic tensions shook the nation and caused fighting throughout Germany? We do not need to go backwards. Die Linke supports a forwards, progressive policy for refugees. We need to take them all in, and we need to provide for them because no one is illegal.
Well, you obviously did not listen to my point, being that the fact that it was in the 1940s does not matter as much as that law was created after the dictatorship of Hitler ended. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen any dictatorships quite like that one in our German nation as of late. And that is why we can no longer let that law address and concern the refugees. Because right now, a lot of y'all are going to apply it to the issue, well, they allow those who are seeking asylum into our country. However, that was a law created in the 1940s for a very specific reason, and it has no longer serves a purpose in our German's basic law. We need to get rid of it, and it should not apply to refugees.
Whether it was a dictatorship or not should not matter. These people are still suffering. They're going through a big, giant, terrible war in their own country, and they have nowhere else to go. They want safety the same way others wanted safety under Hitler, and so we should let them in.
But it's not because of our hand. That law was created because we push people from our country, and this is saying we will accept them back. That is what that law means. It does not mean that we're going to accept people from other countries because they are not our responsibility. Our responsibility is Germany. And why that might seem egocentric to y'all, I do not care. Because we're talking about our German people, and they're the ones that are going to be voting, since they are German citizens.
The history of divisions within Germany, the Berlin Wall, the Protestant Reformation, and many other situations are exactly why a centrist policy is necessary and needs to be adopted at this moment. We're seeing right now fighting between politicians who are all trying to solve the same problem because of clashes in ideology. Centricism needs to be embraced in the German nation.
Do you have a mode of putting it there, or are you just going to stand up here and say that it needs to be done?
The mode would be through communication within parties, through coalition forming, through the maintaining of current coalitions existing within the CDU and other political parties.
But how do we protect one political party from getting too strong or too big?
That's exactly another matter. That's not something we should be discussing. This is about immigration and not the limiting of powers.
Then why did you start with your central policies, since this is about immigration?
Because central policies do affect refugees. That's why.
And centrism is a compromise. With centrism, we can compromise on an issue that is affecting the German people and Europe.
We need to go with the AfD for the following reasons. Not only have my opponents failed to acknowledge the cost that the refugees will bring to our country, but also the problems that we are already going through right now. Everyone has this grand idea of opening our borders, yet they do not mention the political cost, the economic cost, or the cost on our people. The AfD will stand with the fact that Islam does not belong in Germany. And this is not a matter of being cruel or mean, it is putting our people first. In order to do this, we need to have more checks at external EU borders, agreements with neighboring Austria, and border security systems to curb the influx of refugees. Everyone can come up here and tell you what a grand idea it is to open our borders and to be a kind and caring country, but it's simply not logical nor realistic. And that is why we need to go with the AfD, because AfD puts Germany first. And that is what we're running for, are we not? We're running from German office, not Syrian office or anything else. So that is why you should vote AfD.
I would like to provide a point on one of my opponent's accusations that Islam does not belong in Germany. Well, I speak for the German Islam population where citizens are part of this religion. Now, I think that since Germany is such a diverse country, we should be accepting of every single religion out there and not base or discriminate, because that would be something that puts us back to ethnic cleansing, something that we unfortunately went through in World War II. Bringing this back, during our own turmoil during this time, countries such as, but not limited to, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Hungary, the Netherlands, and Poland, and more countries, took in thousands of German refugees during World War II. We are indebted to society when there are mundanes in search of asylum in life-threatening situations. We will remain to keep our borders open to any refugee in need of asylum and cooperate with the European efforts to take in people in need of assistance, to promote human life, and to further our moral stances within our German population, so that they too will abide by the laws of society, wholeheartedly provide assistance to those in need, regardless of race or religion.
I agree. And as a member of Die Grünen, we should integrate all refugees, but Germany should not be the only country faced with these challenges. We need to get the other EU countries involved to better be able to solve this crisis efficiently and effectively.
I agree. When we signed up to be part of the EU, we threw away the idea of Germany first. It is all of Europe that comes with us. And that is why we need to lead in our actions in accepting immigrants into this country and integrating them well into our society, giving them jobs, helping them learn. We should not leave these people alone. Social diversity is a positive feature in our country. It prevents nationalism in the EU where it does not belong. Our job should be easing fears and not creating them.
Immigration is a complex and multifaceted issue that cannot be solved by joining and supporting just one party. It is a matter of joining together and joining forces of all parties in Germany to bring forth what their unique position has to offer. It would be difficult to integrate Islamic people into the German society, as its illustrious history of Christianity dates back thousands of years to the Holy Roman Empire. It will be difficult economic-wise. However, it should be done on the backs of the multinational corporations that are headquartered in Germany, who would be more than welcome to offer a lower wage to a Syrian worker. The policies discussed here are better than what has been mentioned earlier. Compromise is necessary for the solidarity of the German state and is instrumental to saving the hordes of people that would be doomed if borders were to be totally closed. However, if we were to open our borders fully and accept an all-inclusive policy, it would doom our country, it would doom the German people.
Overall, it is necessary to complement that we have to intake refugees as a German nation. It has not stopped us from being part of the European Union, and we will be in collective effort with Sweden and other taking countries that have been able to provide with the effort as well. As part of the European Union, it is our duty to take in refugees.
Unfortunately, we have to suspend this debate for time.